Our last speaker of the day is Dr. JoAnna Harper, who is a multiple state licensed consultant pharmacist specializing in integrative pain management with personal emphasis in scleroderma and lupus. Dr. Harper received her doctorate of pharmacy degree from Oregon State University and a bachelor's degree from the University of Arizona in molecular and cellular biology, graduating with honors. With her early childhood diagnosis of Raynaud's, scleroderma, and lupus, she brings a realistic approach to managing symptoms using all available modalities, including complementary, lifestyle, and functional medicine approaches. Dr. Harper is passionate about providing education, information, advice, and support for patients to become empowered to be active members of their healthcare communities, as demonstrated by her 26 years of collaboration with the scleroderma community. Please join me in welcoming our friend, Dr. JoAnna Harper.
Thank you, everyone.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And as everybody knows, usually JoJo comes with me. So she wanted to say a quick hello.
Goodbye.
Hi.
Before we started the presentation. Okay, so I will share my screen here. There you go.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, that was a little more challenging than I had anticipated.
No worries.
So great to be here again, and thank you all for having me. It is my great pleasure to do this talk, especially for you guys in Oregon, near and dear to my heart. I love and miss you all. Hopefully I can see you sometime over the summer. I will keep you all posted. But in the meantime, let's talk about CBD and THC, because we all know hot topic of conversation. And my ultimate goal here is really, are they right for you? And that's really the big question here. So I wanted to celebrate a few of the beautiful memories of Cheri throughout this workshop, as the lessons she taught me continue to help guide me through life. Her positive outlook and zest for living life to the fullest is demonstrated in all of the photos that are throughout this presentation of our 2005 advocacy trip to Washington, D.C. I don't know if you remember that, Liz. I don't even know if these pictures have actually come out to everybody, but they were saved on a very wonderful CD drive that long ago. So I really have no clue how Cheri would feel about this topic of conversation, but I know she was always really into research and really supportive in that. So hopefully we are all happy for the new hope that this can bring. So with that, I'm trying to make this a little less intense, more practical approach to this talk, as medically it's been a pretty intense year for me as well. So we will start. So the main objectives for this is really just to differentiate between the terminology. There's so much terminology when it comes to cannabis in CBD and THC. So I want to go through what each term means, as well as the complexity of cannabis and the human body, how to select the right products, how to look for side effects and concerns and drug interactions. As we all know, I still am a clinical pharmacist, no matter which way we cut it, patient or not. I still have to talk about the important stuff like drug interactions. And then as well as the legal and social concerns, looking at new products or old products that may be new products that may get FDA approval in the near future. And then I want to end with really the big question is, does CBD and THC really address symptoms, or can it modify the progression of scleroderma? And I think those are really the big questions of research right now. And looking at really the bigger picture, are we really addressing more of the root cause of scleroderma, or what could be other contributing factors to this scleroderma, and really appreciating the integrative aspects of different care that's available? So a little bit about me, if y'all don't know, new haircut and all, thank you, Scleroderma, it's fantastic. I'm an integrative medicine pharmacist that specializes in pain management particularly. with intimate knowledge of scleroderma and other autoimmune conditions, more so by living it, but also helping out all of those in the community for the last 20 plus years. I did get my doctorate degree from Oregon State University, so I'm very proud of that. And I continue to be a patient advocate and educator, with my only goal being to empower you to become an active member of your healthcare team and to learn as much as you can about all the different topics, including those that may or may not be taboo. So I really have nothing to disclose. Where it is necessary, where my involvement in industry is absolutely necessary, I will state where that is. Anything that comes from that actually goes directly to the Scleroderma Foundation or other scleroderma research opportunities, but it does not influence this educational presentation in any way. This is for educational purposes only. I have no intentions of giving you medical advice. Please make sure you talk to your providers about any of the information I'm going to share with you today. Scleroderma varies between individuals, and I'm going to mention that multiple times throughout this talk. So what works for you may not work for your friend, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to try and point out all of the differences here. But it is ultimately your responsibility to manage a personalized medical plan for yourself. So all medical decisions, legal or not, I don't care if it's legal or not legal, wherever you're listening to this, but they should always be discussed with your healthcare providers. So when we get into the history of cannabis, it dates all the way back to 2737 BC, where it was used for memory, rheumatism, and gout. So it wasn't until 1839 that an Irish physician started researching it, but the ban in 1925, the US ban of THC, halted any future research until 1978, where the Controlled Substances Therapeutic Research Act allowed the medical community to research cannabis. Unfortunately, the strains they were permitted to use were far less potent than the strains that were available at the time and that were currently being used. In 2003, the World Health Organization recommended THC as a Schedule 4, which means it is medical, there is good medical reason to use it, and it has low abuse potential. But unfortunately, that hasn't filtered into the DEA system as well. In 2016, researchers were finally allowed to use the stronger, more current strains for research, although federal law still prohibits cannabis. So there is still limited support in the medical community and the research community regarding this. So we will go through that a little bit more. But when we come to terminology and talk about it as a plant, it's from the family Cannabiceae, and the genus is Cannabis sativa. So that is the broad category it's all under. And then there's some controversy over the species versus subspecies, being some people say the species is the Indica sativa and ruderalis, and others say that is the species itself. Species or subspecies, it doesn't really bother me either way. But really what it comes down to is lions and tigers are all part of the same species, but then you have subspecies like the different types of tigers associated with that animal. So the same is similar for cannabis plants. So they are related, they are similar, they can interbreed, but most plants can, and that creates all these different variability where indica and sativa, it gets really, really confusing very fast. So we will break that down here in the next few slides. So this does not look any less complicated than what I promised. So I know you're saying, but JoAnna, look at this. This is not easy. Okay, I get it. So plant science is based on the adaptable genetic engineering and breeding that creates many different versions. But the concern is most often the US products are all bred to be very high THC content. So that being said, it is important to note that there are 568 unique molecules in cannabis. So whereas a drug, when there's drug discovery, we try and pick out one different chemical and test that. And unfortunately, that's incredibly challenging with cannabis. There are over 144 cannabinoids, all working on the endocannabinoid system. And we'll talk about that here in the next slide. But within those cannabinoids, you have cannabidiol, which is CBD, which usually has no euphoria and has CB2 activity. Okay, with that, we're looking at reducing inflammation, antidepressant, decreasing IBS symptoms, those types of things. So that's really the activity that we are looking at for scleroderma in particular. And the THC, or the delta-9 THC, is the most psychoactive cannabinoid that we have, and it has CB1 and CB2 activity. So with those activities, we're looking at decreasing nausea, increasing appetite, relaxation, decreasing muscle spasms, sleep aid, those types of symptom control. So when you look at all of this and you look at all of the different chemical compounds, we have not just CBD and THC, we have CBN, we have CBG, we have CBC, THCV, CBVD. I can keep going with about all the acronyms possible, but really what it comes down to is there are many, many, many different compounds within CBD and THC, or the cannabis plant in general. So when we're looking at it and we're looking at research, know that there is a lot of hope on the horizon, but it is incredibly complex. So the products that I'm recommending usually are more of the simpler variety, but we will talk about things that are available in the dispensaries as well. So when they do talk about a full spectrum plant, though, they are talking about every single one of these receptor sites or molecules that can work on these different receptor sites. So, and if you look at the differences between CBD and THC, we're looking at just this chemical bond here, and then the attached molecule. That is it. So really the difference lies in how it connects to that receptor. So within the endocannabinoid system, we do know that CB1 and CB2 receptors are the primary components that we're looking at for research. Now, on the next slide, you will see many, many more receptors that we are targeting with, or that we find that the cannabinoids do interact with. But CB1 receptors are mostly in the central nervous system and in circulating immune cells. So this is where it's really important for scleroderma patients, is it's within the immune system. Now, they are also located throughout the body in peripheral tissues, such as the heart and the lungs and the adrenal gland. And then when you look at CB2 receptors, you're looking at the immune system as well. So macrophages, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. CB2 is the receptor site that we are looking for scleroderma, whereas CB1 receptors, it's in circulating immune, whereas CB2 is in other types of immune system responses, which is what we're looking for with scleroderma. So I apologize for misspeaking. We are looking for CB2 receptor agonists. So we're looking to regulate inflammation and looking for skin involvement in particular. So most of the new drug research going on right now is targeting the CB2 receptors. So there is so much more to this story, though, beyond CB1 and CB2 receptors. Remember the 568 molecules in cannabis? Many of these molecules can activate different receptors in different ways. They can turn them on, they can turn them off, and they can also modify the receptors. So if you look at this slide, you see that all of these other membrane receptors that are available for activity sites of cannabinoids in particular. So when you start looking at CB1 and CB2, but then you look at PPAR gamma, which is another one we're going to talk about for research currently, and also serotonin. So it's really interesting how many receptors there are and how much we still don't know about cannabis and the results on the body. So more information to come in the future. Most important point for us to remember today is that we don't have all the information about what cannabis, whether it's CBD or THC, can be doing to us now or in the future. So the other conversation that comes up is the difference between hemp versus marijuana. Hemp and cannabis belong to, or hemp and marijuana belong to the same genus of the Cannabis sativa, but were developed for very different purposes. Generally speaking, hemp was grown for a soft, durable fiber for cloth, but it's also been grown for medicinal purposes with THC concentrations less than 0.3%. per the US industrial hemp definition from the Farm Bill of 2018. So medicinal products are made from various different subspecies of the cannabis plant. Since marijuana is still classified as a Schedule I controlled substance federally, any CBD or THC sourced products from marijuana are illegal in the states, except in states that allow recreational and medicinal marijuana use. So it's really important to note that hemp products usually are the lowest THC component. So it's to be legal, they have to be less than 0.3% THC. And with marijuana, so that's technically a type 3. So with marijuana, that's usually the type 1 or type 2 products. So some of the dispensaries are going to typing the products versus sativa and indica based on these definitions. So if you are going to a dispensary that is using the type system, you'll want to look for more of a type 3 product for the less THC component. Marijuana, again, it's higher THC component, generally speaking, and I recommend minimal activity after dosing until you figure out how you respond to it. So there's always that conversation of sativa versus indica. Again, two different subspecies of the same plant or the same genus. And sativa, generally speaking, has more of a head high, and it has this alertness and creativity, increased energy, whereas indica is more classified as in the couch. So it's more of a body high, relaxation, pain relief, and sleep aid primarily. So best for nighttime use. Often patients will use a combination of both, one for daytime, one for nighttime. But it is really important to note here that just because it does say sativa versus indica, it does not necessarily mean that that correlates back to the CBD and THC content. So most of the THC products they are supposed to specify how much THC and CBD content is in each product. So below are given the strains of different cannabis sativa strains versus cannabis indica. Okay, but the THC and CBD contents can vary widely despite its designation as sativa or indica. Avoiding the higher THC products, if you're prone to anxiety or racing thoughts, would be highly beneficial no matter what terminology they put on it, being sativa versus indica. So it's really, really important when you're looking at dispensary products to look at potency, how strong is it, how much THC versus CBD content there is, what is the dose of each, what is the chemical profile, what receptors is it going to hit, but also requesting purity testing. So are there any toxins? Are there any microbes in there that could make you sicker? And then is the product in there really what they're saying is in there? So all of that is incredibly important when you go to pick out a product, especially at dispensaries or other places that are less regulated. Dispensaries, generally speaking, are more regulated in the medical marijuana states. So usually they have these things readily available. Other areas that you can get products, CBD products over the counter are usually your local co-ops or natural food stores. Again, we're talking about, the concerns about purity and concentration and making sure that it does not have any other ingredients, particularly Delta-9 THC, which is the really psychoactive component. I know some of the local co-ops and natural food stores do provide medical advice, which really fades the line for me. So I really recommend talking to medical professionals about this, an open-minded pharmacist or open-minded physicians, and asking what their advice is on different strains as well. I'll try and give you as much information as I can in this talk to give you some information, but there will be more details that come along for you personally. And it is important to know that most of these compounds, the CBD and THC, are broad spectrum, meaning they have some THC in it, which means you can still test positive for THC, even if it says it is less than 0.3%. It is an accumulation effect. So the more that you use it, the more likely you are to test positive for THC. So some of the verified products, and this is where the industry comes in. Unfortunately, these are provider-only products, meaning you have to have a provider code, which is the only reason I have signed up as a provider, is to provide these to my patients, because I do know that the purity and the testing is there for every single batch. So I know that they are safe products. So the first company is Enhanced Clinical Nutrition. They are 100% CBD. They have oil, they have capsules, they have lotions. The website is there and the provider code is there if you're interested in ordering anything off there. I do know the safety of their products, and I do trust this company for their products. Revive MD is another one that actually has full spectrum products, including THC included products, as well as CBD only. And they actually have more of a flavored oil component versus others, but their phone number is there as well, with the code as necessary. So I get a lot of questions about Delta-8 THC. It is a less potent product of THC, but it also works at the same receptors as THC. So we're looking at the CB1 and CB2 receptors again, which again, we're not looking for CB1 activity, we're looking more for CB2 activity for scleroderma. So it does have the potential of increasing the fibrosis that is common with scleroderma. So I always err on the side of caution when it comes to using CBD only products first. But Delta-8 is one of those very popular conversations that I have. So I do want to say that many of the Delta-8 products, although they are not illegal, they are not tested for purity. So there's been instances where shop owners are being prosecuted for the high levels of Delta-9 THC, so the traditional THC being in the Delta-8 products. So caution in where you're getting your products. So when we look at routes of administration, so you can take it orally, you can do it topically, or you can do it inhaled. So orally, the variability, the bioavailable aspects of it is very variable depending on the patient. As we all know, we absorb things differently regardless as scleroderma patients, but now add in the bioavailability of the product itself. So tinctures, usually oils are the most potent, but tinctures and oils are the best absorbed. Edibles are also a good option, but know that there is going to be some good variability between onset. So with anything oral, it could take 60 to 180 minutes to really start working. And it can last 6 to 8 hours. So this would not be one of those, oh, that edible I just ate 5 minutes ago didn't do anything. Here, let me take another one. Personal experience, I would not recommend that. Even as a pharmacist, you make mistakes. So that, goes to say the variability is so high with oral administration. With oral sprays, it does not go through the liver, so there's no first pass effect, which is fantastic, usually a little better absorption. So that's another option as well. They have lozenges as well. And again, variability, anything that can be soaked into the mucosal tissue is going to be better absorbed and does not go through the liver. Topical, I really recommend as one of my first line approaches for localized symptoms, especially joint pain and muscle pain. So there are various creams. There are suppositories as well, which is a different and even more variable absorption rate, as well as nasal sprays. And then inhaled. So the variability is even higher, even with no interstitial lung disease. So just a fair warning on this one. Not only is it variable, it is quick acting. So yes, we appreciate that. The duration is shorter, but do you know what other impurities are in that product? So if we are already concerned about environmental toxins damaging the very delicate tissue within our lungs, inhaling something, even if it's vaping can actually be worse than smoking based on the components within that vaping system. So I do not recommend anything inhaled, and I know that is not a popular choice or not a popular answer, but from a medical standpoint, oral and topical are the way to go. So with dosing, you always start low, go slow, and stay low. So I always recommend the low THC products initially. So when you talk about the actual plant itself, it's usually 1 to 3 grams per day. When you're at a steady dose, that's definitely not a starting dose. We'll talk about the starting dose on the next slide. Very rarely do we go over 5 grams per day. And the reason being is we don't know the long-term effects of these medications, both on scleroderma and on the body itself. And usually with the herbal, start with 1 inhalation, if you're gonna do it that way, every 15 to 30 minutes. So give it some time. Please be patient with this. With CBD, there are no recommendations or guidelines associated with starting doses, but we usually start at 5 milligrams a day, a couple of times a day, and then slowly work your way up. Usually every 3 days is when I would say to do a dosage increase to make sure your body is doing fine and that you can monitor your other medications as well if there's any other changes in symptoms, because there are a lot of drug interactions. It may take months to find the right combination, the right product, and the right dose for you. And it's always best to talk to a pharmacist if you can regarding this dosing and any complications you may have. And remember, everyone's genetics and tolerances are completely different. So please remember, what works for you may not work for you, or what works for your friends may not work for you, and vice versa. So with dosing as a beginner, it is recommended to do 1 to 10 milligrams with tinctures, because tinctures you can use really, really small doses and they're measured. So you can figure out what dose you need and slowly work your way up rather than getting hit really hard and feeling the side effects associated with that. So going to the hard candies, the syrups, and the baked goods are all after you've had experience with the tincture. So definitely start low and go slow. So with THC, generally speaking, the dosing is, basically 1 to 2.5 milligrams of THC at bedtime. You work your way up from there. Even though the chart at the bottom does state that for persistent problems, you can use higher doses. This is one of those products that's so variable in so many patients, and there's so many drug interactions that starting low is really your beneficial for you to reduce pain, anxiety, stress, so on and so forth. So you'll want to dose slowly increase every couple of days. I usually recommend every 3 days to make sure that your body, you and your body can work together to figure out what feels good and what doesn't. And then looking at, what your maximum level is and trying to keep it at the lowest dose possible. So, because everybody is asked, here is a recipe to make canna butter. There is a lot of steps here. Either take a photo of it, or I can make the slides available if necessary. But these are the steps to make butter. And just to let you know that this recipe does translate to 30 milligrams of THC per tablespoon. So if you're just starting out, that is a whole lot. So butter and corn at this point would probably not be a good option with this. But starting out in really low doses, just to see if you tolerate it. But generally speaking, this is a better route, a healthier route for scleroderma patients to take in the cannabis. So pharmacist comes out here, patient has to be put away for a second. Side effects. CBD does have side effects all in itself. So the common side effects for CBD are nausea and fatigue. And I know that that's what we're using to treat those same symptoms, but it can still cause nausea, fatigue, anxiety, irritability, and changes in mood with CBD. So again, that's usually dose dependent. So starting low and going slow would be helpful. And with THC, the side effects are much more pronounced. So dry mouth is the one that most people talk about, and same with the euphoria or the hallucinations. So those are some big concerns. But as more users are documenting their side effects, we are seeing a huge problem with hyperemesis or extreme nausea with THC, especially at higher doses. So this is not something to be taken lightly. This is just like any other medication. It does have its drawbacks as well. There is vasodilation to the core, which also means vasoconstriction to the fingers. So Raynaud's can become a bigger issue when you're using THC products. So not only are we targeting Sjogren's with the dry mouth and targeting Raynaud's with the THC, these are all reasons why I don't recommend THC as our first line approach to a cannabis product. So drug interactions. Now there are limited data. We do know that there are CNS depressant effects when you add it with opioid medications, any type of anxiolytics like alprazolam or alcohol. So those are all concerns. There can be mania when combined with antidepressants like Prozac. Or fluoxetine, any of those, citalopram, and then increased tachycardia and delirium with TCA antidepressants, so amitriptyline or any sympathomimetic, which can be cold medicine, so oxymetazoline or phenylephrine. I hope many of us are not doing cocaine and amphetamines, but I have to say it there, but also clonidine. So clonidine can cause tachycardia with THC and CBD. There is also an increased risk of immunosuppression with corticosteroids. So these are all major concerns for me. Again, reasons why I stick to CBD only products. And if you look at the bottom here, THC is involved with the CB1 and CB2 receptors like we talked about, but it also has effects on CYP2C9, CYP2C19, and CYP3A4, and these are all hepatic enzymes necessary to break down other medications. So there can be many, many drug interactions there. And then with CBD, there's CYP2C19 and CYP3A4, as well as the UGT enzymes as well, which I'm not going to go into detail today. I'm just going to target the CYP enzymes because they are the most common. So just to let you know, this list of medications right here all compete for the same CYP3A4 enzyme. Same with CBD and THC. So we're talking many of the drugs that you would normally see: amitriptyline, alprazolam, let's see here, buprenorphine. There's citalopram, clarithromycin, so antibiotics. So there's many drugs on here that most of us are on. There's the proton pump inhibitors, so Nexium is on here, Prilosec is on here, prednisone is on here. So just know that we are competing when we use cannabis for these same enzymes, and your liver only has X amount of enzymes. Most of the time we have plenty, but there does become instances where we don't have enough to break down each individual compound. So medications that can increase THC and CBD in particular, so Tagamet or cimetidine, Cipro as an antibiotic, diltiazem, fluoxetine, grapefruit is another big one. I know that's been a topic on conversation on the Facebook groups. Methylprednisolone and prednisone. These are all concerns for me when it comes to medications that you're already on that can increase the amount of THC and CBD that you feel. So starting at a really low dose if you're on these medications is very important. So medications that can also increase THC by itself. So Depakote or valproic acid, fluconazole for any yeast infections, quercetin. Quercetin is also a plant flavanol found in high quantity in homegrown or organic tomatoes. So that's something important to know. It is a great antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects, and often used in turmeric in combination. So caution when you're starting, stopping, changing doses of either any of your supplements, your medications, or your cannabis products. So other ones for THC that can increase the amount of THC, you get promethazine, Zoloft or sertraline, lovastatin for cholesterol, just to name a few. So meds that increase CBD, again, starting low: Tagamet, Plavix, Nexium, fluconazole or diflucan, Prozac, and omeprazole again. And then medications that can decrease THC and CBD. So these are the ones that you may feel no effect when you first take it, and it's because these drugs are making it harder for that CBD or the cannabis is metabolized quicker. So Tegretol, dexamethasone, other steroids, garlic supplements, or St. John's wort are some of the bigger ones. And then meds that can decrease THC, and that's Tracleer or Bosentan. So that's something really important to note. A very important drug that we use in scleroderma can decrease the THC that you're receiving. So just know that there are drug interactions there to be taken into consideration. So letting all of your providers know will be very important. So medications that decrease just CBD, particularly St. John's wort, is another one of consideration. So just something to watch out for, that again, the CBD product that you use may not be effective at that lower dose, and that would mean increasing the dose slowly to determine what dose you will need. And also inversely, if you stop the St. John's wort, then you're going to want to decrease the CBD. So contraindications for cannabis: pregnancy or breastfeeding. We really don't know what the effects are on the fetus or the newborn baby. And then if you have any type of psychosis or schizophrenia, there is a mind-altering effect with THC, so there is a big concern there. if there is active addiction. So we will talk about the addictive component here as well. And then caution with all of us with immunocompromised. So again, that goes back to drug-drug interactions, but also how these affect the immune system. Can be both a positive and a negative. So it's something to watch out for. So if your health is declining when you start a cannabis product, you might want to consider stopping the cannabis for the time being to see if that's contributing. And then any other serious health or heart or liver issues, primarily because it is metabolized in the liver. So risks associated with THC. Oh, Cheri loved this photo, by the way. There's a lot of story behind that one. Okay, so increased risk of addiction associated with it, with THC in particular, and then worsening heart disease. Again, reasons why we need to be concerned if there's heart issues. There is an increased risk of a heart attack within 1 hour of inhaling, but that goes away after 24 hours. And then there is a reduction in lung function, especially with inhalation. There are some neurotoxic effects, especially in people younger than 18, but there's also a question on whether it's with adults with many years of using cannabis products. One of the biggest medical emergencies besides hyperemesis is a panic attack associated with THC. And then there's always concern about increased psychosis. So both of those are big concerns when you use THC, especially in higher quantities. So is cannabis addictive? So that's a really good question. So on this scale, there is physical harm. It's on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to physical harm, whereas benzodiazepines and alcohol are higher. And same with dependence for alcohol and benzodiazepines like alprazolam or other medications for anxiety. But it is not harmless. There is still a risk for dependence. So meaning you're gonna have to wean off of it, unless if you don't want to deal with the side effects associated with a quick stopping of the medication. And there is some physical harm associated with it. So both of those need to be taken into consideration. And as the strains become more and more potent, we're going to see the trend more and more towards dependence and physical harm. So when we looked at cannabis dependence, and yes, this is an old study, and I did review this with a recent government study, and it was still very much similar. Marijuana is that about 9% of the people do become dependent on cannabis, and THC in particular. So we're really talking more about THC here. And again, for the children or people less than 18, that risk increases to 17%. So any type of use disorder when it comes to medications, anything addictive, if you're using larger amounts over larger periods of time, you can't control your use, you're spending more time getting the drug, using the drug and recovering from the drug, or craving the drug, and then failing to fulfill your roles and obligations. I understand it's really, really difficult with scleroderma to fulfill your obligations as it is, but when you add a medication to that, that can be contributing. It is something that we want to watch out for. So any type of situations where you know it's physically harmful and you still continue to do it would be signs to seek help for a marijuana use disorder. This is real. We do see it. I don't believe that a marijuana use disorder when it comes to tolerance and withdrawal, because I think tolerance and withdrawal will occur regardless. But that is some of the key components associated with marijuana use disorder when you have the other social aspects as well. So prescription products that are available. So nothing new has come out recently. The ones that we have are dronabinol, which are CB1 and CB2 receptor binding. And that's usually for weight loss or nausea, vomiting. And I have had scleroderma patients get approval for that based on that diagnosis. And then Sesamet is another one, again, nausea, vomiting, both CB1 and CB2. And Epidiolex is a CB2 drug mainly used for seizure disorders in children. But that we know that we are working in the right direction. And this is where we get most of our data from for the drug-drug interactions, is based on these medications that have already gone through the FDA approval process. So the promising new meds, the medication, never mind, it's not going to work today. Anyways, the one from Corbus was originally used for scleroderma, and it went through studies, and it was in phase 2, I believe, at the time, but it failed to prove superiority over placebo in phase 3 clinical trials, particularly because of the other immune modulating medications that the participants were on, like Cellcept. So there are new studies are concentrating on autoimmunity and reducing inflammation. So there's a lot of hope on the horizon. So the ones that we are looking at right now in particular are Corbus for dermatomyositis in lupus in particular, again with the CB2 agonist. And then Emerald Health is working on EHP 101 for systemic sclerosis and multiple sclerosis. And we are looking at EHP 101 is particularly a CB2, but it also works on PPAR gamma, which is that other receptor that has exciting promise for cell growth and to prevent inflammation and fibrosis. So those are really promising for scleroderma. And then potential immune modulation and neuroprotection. CB2 in particular is for modulating inflammation, immune modulation, the vascular responses, as well as neuroprotection. So both mechanisms of action seem really, really promising for these medications. And then there's also another pathway that Emerald Health is using, and that's the hypoxia-inducible factor pathway, or the HIF, which may reduce inflammation and lead to neuroprotection as well. So many have asked me what drugs are similar to this product here for Corbus, now that the study for scleroderma has failed. So this is the most similar to CBD only products because they do target CB2 receptors. So we're looking at products with no THC if you want to get a medication similar to the one that they were using in the trial. So good news, Emerald Health is enrolling patients in their study for phase 2 clinical trials for the EHP 101. This is the criteria that's necessary. You can take a picture of this, and it does have the website that you can go to, as well as the study locations. There is not a study location in Oregon or Washington, but you can come visit me in Minnesota. I will be happy to host you. But there is hope. They are using this for the skin thickening associated with scleroderma and as well as Raynaud's. So it is very important to mention the laws when it comes to medical cannabis. Oregon and Washington laws are very similar. It is very, very important to double check your state laws before engaging in any activity related to cannabis. But these are the limitations based on how much you can carry, how much you can buy, how much you can sell, how much you can grow. You can gift it, but you cannot get money for it, and you cannot barter. And you must be 21 years or older. So all important to know, but more importantly, it's to know what the limitations are legally. So no crossing state lines with medical cannabis, no getting on planes, things like that. There are ways around this, but being recorded, I am not very comfortable talking about that here. But that being said, it is very, very important not to drive under the influence. So so the bigger question is, I'm a big proponent of root cause approach to determine what could be the potential factors involved in activation of the scleroderma genes. When you look at the mechanisms of actions as CBD, you see there is hope in both symptom control and slowing the progression of the disease. So this is all very exciting based on the mechanisms, but it isn't clear yet if it will address the root causes. Someone in the Scleroderma Facebook groups had asked, how should we heal? Which I think is a very important question. Yes, there are herbs and supplements and other medicines that can help you heal, which can be another talk all in its own. But if you don't understand the bigger personal picture of what may be contributing to your symptoms, it brings us to the very frustrating game of trial and error. As Dr. Ginny Merrill stated, please do not underestimate the impact of the small daily activities you do to water your garden towards better health. The things we can do for ourselves that will help reduce the progression while working towards a healthier lifestyle can give us the sense of control over our health. Believe me, I've been doing the hard work over the past several years, so I know what I'm going to recommend. It may seem daunting and impossible, and I will do it very quickly since we're getting close to time for questions, but I hope to provide you some small ways to work towards these goals. So diet, exercise, stress management, which I will not touch on because Dr. Ginny did a fantastic job with that, and then building your medical team. So I know I can hear the groans now. As much as I'd like to say I can provide a magic pill to everyone, although I will say that for some have stated that CBD and THC has been that wonder drug for them, but with such a complex disease process, striving toward a healthy standard of living is necessary. So with diet, it's always important to talk about what is a healthy diet and what does that mean. So I wanted to give you a few basics that helped me in my healing journey over the last couple of years. And that being eating 6 to 8 cups of a variety of vegetables a day and putting it in a smoothie if tolerated. If you want recipes and resources, please reach out to me. My email is at the end of this. I will glad to share any and all of the resources I have found over the last couple of years. But finding that eating a variety of different vegetables and rotating every 3 days to make it to where your body doesn't view that particular food product as a danger. So most of the food allergy testing will show that you are sensitive to what you eat most often. And that is true because your body is responding to what it sees the most of, and it sees it as danger. So if you rotate, say, eat broccoli on one day, wait 3 days and eat broccoli again, your body doesn't view it as an offending agent. But start with really small baby steps. I learned that progress over perfection means more to me making small changes toward these goals every single day. So start out with something very, very small that you can implement today. And then working through any of the problems and creating solutions to what those problems are. Journaling can be incredibly helpful, and food prep is also helpful. Again, a very, very long journey that I've been through. I'm not going to go into diet in particular as far as which diet and anti-inflammatory, so on and so forth. But ultimately getting in a good, healthy variety of diet, including a large variety of vegetables, is going to be very, very important. And then exercise. Any movement is better than nothing. Stretching in bed during the ads or after each episode, a short walk, things like that, even if it's just to the mailbox or just along your front walk or just to your front door. A little bit goes a long way, and then keep improving every day. And then Qigong is actually a really, really slow and steady way to keep you moving, but in a mindful way, and helps relieve stress as well. Stress management, a lot of free YouTubes, a lot of free podcasts. Ultimately, find your joy and seek a great therapist. Dr. Jenny did an absolute fantastic job with this, so we don't need to spend more time on this. And then the medical team. Who is on your board, on the board of your medical team? You are the head of the table. All of the others should be people you trust and know that have your best interest at heart. It may take multiple attempts at finding each specialist that you jive with or that you communicate well with, but it is totally worth it. Finding a professional clinician to address unanswered questions, including but not limited to the root causes. So any underlying conditions, any infections you've had, past toxicities. For me personally, what took me down was mold toxicity. As silly as that may sound, living in Oregon, as long as I didn't affect me then, surely affected me now. And so looking at nutrient deficiencies, genetic concerns, your ability to detox, what your inflammation potential is. So looking at all of these factors can be really, really helpful in finding those providers. Again, if you have questions on where to go, I'm always available. I haven't worked in 2.5 years and I'm enjoying every second of this. So thank you all for allowing me an opportunity to share what I know. So no single program will address all of the issues for you. So picking up pieces of useful information and keeping a journal and implementing them slowly and surely will make you more successful at this. So in conclusion, THC and CBD, again, below the age of 18 years of age, I would not recommend it unless you have weighed the risks versus benefits. Try CBD first. I really do like CBD as a first choice because THC can be very hard to tolerate and can increase anxiety and nausea. Start low and go slow. May take months. Make sure there's third-party testing for purity and concentration. I do not recommend vaping and smoking. Follow all your state laws for anybody who wants to doubt my sincerity when it comes to the recording of this conversation. And then also make sure that all of your providers know, even if they don't agree, at least they can give you their thoughts. We may not want to hear those thoughts, and I completely understand that. I hear it a lot about mold and how mold doesn't exist. I get it. But I am so completely honest because I still want to hear what they have to say to take that into consideration. Genetics and medications will affect the metabolism of cannabis and THC. So any changes you make sure you don't make 2 at a time. And then the goal really is to decrease the necessary medications, not adding another one. So starting cannabis, if you find that it works for you, try to start decreasing some of the other medications used for symptom control, including opioids and benzodiazepines. So no easy button for medical care or for health. Lifestyle managements are important, and please be an active member of your healthcare team. So as long as that was, I definitely want to thank you all for attending. Hopefully you enjoyed all of the photos of our trip to DC, and I'm open for questions. Let me see if I can open.
Well, thank you so much, JoAnna, for doing this for us. And thank you to everyone who attended our 21st annual Cheri Wu Scleroderma Education Seminar. We all hope that you learned a lot today. If you enjoyed today's presentations, please consider making a donation to the National Scleroderma Foundation Oregon chapter at scleroderma.org/Oregon, so we can continue to bring you content like this. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for the walk. Anyway, that's a wrap. Thanks to everyone for attending. We hope you learned a whole lot. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, what's left of it, and we hope to see everybody really soon.
And thank you, Christina, for all your hard work in putting all of this together.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.